All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the oldest and, let's be honest, one of the most unsettling questions in all of philosophy. It's an idea that really gets to the very heart of what we think we know about, well, everything.
So let me ask you this directly. How can you be absolutely 100% certain you're not dreaming right now? Or that everything you see, everything you hear and feel isn't just an incredibly elaborate, totally convincing illusion? Now, I know it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it is a massive challenge that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries.
And to really get our heads around this, philosophers came up with a thought experiment that has become an absolute classic: the brain in a vat. You can think of it as the modern, scientific, supercharged version of that ancient doubt, and it forces us to get really uncomfortable with the limits of our own knowledge.
But to really understand this idea, we have to rewind the clock way back to the 17th century, to a philosopher named René Descartes. This guy launched a personal mission, a total demolition project, to tear down every single one of his beliefs until he could find just one thing, one single thing that he could know for sure.
Now, Descartes knew he couldn't check every belief one by one. That would take forever. So instead, he came up with this really powerful three-step method. It was designed to find a single reason to doubt entire categories of his opinions all at once.
So, step one, he starts with the obvious, our senses. He points out that, yeah, sometimes they lie to us. You see a mirage on a hot road, or you see a tower in the distance that looks square, but when you get up close, it's actually round. And his logic here is pretty simple. If someone has lied to you even once, can you ever really fully trust them again? He decides to apply that same level of caution to his senses.
But Descartes pretty quickly realized that doubting stuff that's tiny or far away, that's just scratching the surface. He soon stumbled upon a much deeper, much more unsettling level of uncertainty, what he called the dream dilemma.
He pointed out that dreams often feel incredibly, vividly real. While you're in one, you are completely convinced it's happening, which brings up a really disturbing question. How can you prove, right at this very moment, that you aren't just in the middle of a remarkably convincing dream?
Okay, so Descartes anticipates an objection. He's like, all right, maybe only a madman would doubt something as obvious as the fact that I'm sitting here by the fire. He's trying to see if there's a way out of this problem.
He even brings up the medical theories of his time, suggesting that maybe a madman's brain is just impaired by an unrelenting vapor of black bile. And this idea, just as a quick aside, comes from a really old medical theory called humorism, which basically said that your physical and mental health were all controlled by different fluids and gases in your body.
But he just as quickly throws that idea out. He argues that even if he's not insane, the things he experiences in his dreams are often just as bizarre and just as convincing as anything a madman might experience. Since there's no clear test to tell the feeling of being awake from the feeling of a vivid dream, he's left with this dizzying uncertainty, totally unable to prove he isn't dreaming right now.
And it's this dizzying, spiraling uncertainty that leads Descartes to his final and by far his most powerful tool for doubt. He decides to push his skepticism to the absolute limit with a thought experiment that's become famous, the evil genius hypothesis.
He asks us to imagine something pretty terrifying. What if instead of a good, benevolent God, there exists a supremely powerful and malicious demon, an evil genius, whose entire purpose, his whole reason for being, is to deceive you about everything?
In this scenario, nothing you perceive is real. The sky, the ground, colors, sounds, even your own hands and your own body, they are all nothing more than elaborate illusions, just clever hoaxes planted in your mind by this deceiver to trap you into believing they're real.
Now, if this idea of a completely fabricated reality is starting to sound familiar, well, it should, because Descartes' 350-year-old thought experiment became the direct philosophical blueprint for modern stories like The Matrix.
To really nail down this connection, let's just update Descartes' evil genius for the 21st century. So, forget the supernatural demon. Instead, I want you to picture a brilliant but completely unethical neuroscientist. We'll call him Zeke.
So, one night, Zeke and his team sneak into your room. They put you under and they carefully, surgically remove your brain. They place it in this high-tech vat full of life-sustaining fluid and hook it up to a supercomputer that can feed it perfectly precise electrical signals.
Zeke's supercomputer then simulates your entire day. You wake up, you feel the warmth of your morning coffee, you taste your breakfast, you chat with your friends, you experience all of it.
From your point of view, from inside your mind, everything feels completely and totally normal. But in reality, you don't have a body anymore. You are, quite literally, just a brain in a vat. So here's the crucial point. Even though the technology and the deceiver have changed, the fundamental philosophical problem is exactly the same. It doesn't matter if it's a 17th century demon creating illusions or a 21st century scientist sending electrical signals, the result is identical. Your perceived reality is a complete and total fabrication.
And this brings us to the shared, and let's be honest, kind of depressing conclusion of both Descartes' evil genius and the brain in a vat thought experiments.
Here's the punchline. Because your subjective internal experience would feel exactly the same whether you were living in the real world or being stimulated in a vat, there's no way to tell the difference from the inside. You can't run a test, you can't check your own perceptions to prove you're not being deceived.
You know, Descartes himself found this possibility deeply unsettling. This wasn't just a fun game for him. He described the feeling as a toilsome wakefulness, a state where he felt he could no longer live in the clear light of certainty, but was instead forced to exist among the inextricable shadows of this doubt he'd created. And that leaves us right back where we started, but with a much sharper, much more difficult question. If you cannot logically prove that you aren't a brain in a vat being deceived by some evil genius neuroscientist, then how can you claim to truly know anything at all about the world outside your own mind?